What if the anxiety, the complacency, the fear that you're feeling isn't really yours? What if that self doubt, those moments of sudden rage, the exhaustion that just comes out of nowhere, isn't coming from you at all? In over 30 years of working with the paranormal and the spiritual realms, I've seen these patterns come up time and time again, and it tends to lead to entity attachment. Most people don't even realize that it's happening at all, and that's exactly why it works. I'm Kaedrich, a paranormal mentor, spiritual guide. I'm someone who grew up in a haunted house full of spirits. I've lived a paranormal life. I've been around this literally since birth. And over the decades, I have helped thousands of people understand these unseen forces that are influencing our energies, our emotions. They can even influence the life choices we make. And one of the most common questions I get is, what are these entities and why are they attaching to us? And I think it's important today that I start to break that down. So I want to sort of turn this internally. I want you to look inside a little bit. Have you ever felt like those moments where you've gotten a sudden wave of dread? Maybe a moment where you're angry at somebody that you're not even angry at, that maybe you're having certain behaviors, certain thoughts that aren't entirely your own, and they're just seemingly coming out of nowhere. You might be dealing with these unseen influences, and that's why I want to dive into what these entities are and why they attach to us, so maybe you can get a better understanding of what's going on with you and start to make those steps to correct it. So in this video, I want to talk about what these entities are, and we're going to debunk a lot of this mainstream fear. Get notions of demons and demonic possession. Put that away. We're going to talk about what those entities are, what they're doing, why they attach to people, how to recognize if they're influencing you, and how shadow work and spiritual hygiene actually help you. So let's take maybe a clarifying look at what these beings are. They're non-physical, they're energy-based beings. Sometimes they have like a minuscule consciousness. Sometimes they're just like a single thought, a single presence that they bring with them. And sometimes they're complex. They have agendas, they have goals that really can actually outlast human lifetimes. And I'm just going to say flat out, these are not demonic. They're not evil. These notions that we see in movies, that we see and we hear about from churches and social media, all those kind of things, they're not evil entities out to possess you or destroy your life. But I do want you to think of them as more parasitic. They're feeding off of your energy. They're trying to get you to generate the energy for them that they like. And these beings have a wide range to them. They could be like these little low vibrational fragments to intelligent, ancient beings. Some of these are created by human emotion, trauma, our beliefs. Sometimes even in ritual, these entities are created. But I want to emphasize that they are a natural part of the world. I want you to understand that the supernatural is just as natural as the physical world. The supernatural is natural. The paranormal is a normal state of existence. And just like in the physical world, we have mosquitoes, we've got parasitic plants, we've got infections, and we've got animals that prey off of each other. We've got people that prey off of each other. It's very similar in the spiritual world. They just have a bit of a different agenda and a different way of going about that. So let's look at some of these entities. One of the categories that we can't help, but we have to acknowledge it, and these are lost souls. For whatever reason, these are spirits that haven't crossed over. Maybe they're lingering due to fear of what's on the other side. These stories of hell, eternal punishment. They thought they were a bad person. They don't want to go over there. Maybe they've got some guilt or confusion, or they're just clinging on to something that's here in the world that they want. And they're looking for something familiar, something that's comfortable to them. And they will attach to people that can give that to them. A very, very, very common category are created entities like thought forms and egregores, tulpas, servitors. We create these things through our emotions, especially if we have a consistent emotion over and over. We can give them life, sometimes intentionally, almost always unintentionally. They will take on a life of their own. And because they're programmed with emotional energy, that's what they need to survive. And we are a beautiful source of that emotional energy. And so they're going to feed off of us. Egregores love our belief. They want us to believe in them. And they will do things to conjure that belief from us so that we are feeding them. And there are all sorts of low level parasites. They're feeding off of fear, anger, addiction, trauma, all of these sorts of things. They're there and they're super easy to get rid of. Think of it like shooing away a fly, swatting a mosquito, that kind of thing. And there is one category that is kind of weird and strange that we can think of them as like interdimensional beings, non-human entities. They're very intelligent. They've been around for centuries, millennia sometimes. Sometimes they're neutral. Sometimes they're agenda driven. And when they get agenda driven, they think they're creating maybe a symbiotic relationship with us when it's really more of a parasitic relationship. And I do want to mention it is possible to have a very positive, powerful, and wonderful symbiotic relationship with egregores, but we'll save that for a completely different time. Because we need to address, why are these things attaching? Why do they connect with us? They want to be alive. They want to exist in a form that is familiar to them. They want to continue a reality that makes sense to them. And if they are created out of belief energy, out of emotion energy, out of thought energy, they're going to find somebody that matches their frequency, that matches that energy, and they will use that person to generate that energy for them. You see, this is why I'm saying they're not evil, that they're not demonic. They're just trying to live in a way that makes sense to them, and it's not beneficial to us. And the reasons why they attach is because similarities attract and perpetuate. We have something that they want. This could be an energetic anchor point that is created out of personal belief about the self, about certain behaviors, about certain things going on inside. For example, unprocessed trauma, undealt with emotional wounds. These create that energetic resonance that they go, ooh, look, yummy. Let's attach. Let's create this connection so that I can continue to feed and have a parasitic relationship off of this person. They love like addictions and self-destructive patterns because it offers like this great feeding loop that as we buy into these addictive behaviors, as we start to do these self-destructive behaviors, we're creating that energy for them that they're like, yeah, this is great. Hey, do some more. Hey, do another one. Ooh, let's do that again. Great. They're getting fed. Even states of like chronic fear, anger, despair. I want you to understand that every emotion that we feel has an energetic output to it. We're creating this energy. We're like a beacon of energy. And as we're putting out that energy, sometimes that energy creates things like a thought form, but they could also go, ooh, look, there's some yummy energy there. I want to attach to that. And I need to take a pause here. When it comes to like addictive behaviors, when it comes to almost like obsessive thoughts and unresolved emotions that keep popping up and over again, your first line of defense will always be to seek a mental health professional. Yes, it is possible to have a mental illness, have a mental difficulty, and have an attachment that's feeding off of that, which is why it's also important to seek a mental health professional. As a spiritual guide, as a paranormal mentor, I am not qualified to diagnose or treat mental illnesses. But I have seen how this spiritual work works complementary to people who are in these programs, who are getting that help that they need. So I will always tell you, check out a mental health professional. If they're stumped, if they're confused, if things aren't happening, then we can explore possibly an entity attachment. Another way that they show up is we kind of create portals, like an astral opening, sometimes from our spiritual practices, like poorly protected rituals. We're doing some unconscious channeling. You may have a natural gift for something, but you've been told your whole life it's evil, it's bad, it's terrible, these are demons, and similarities attract and perpetuate. That's what you bring in. And this really does happen from improper set and setting with psychedelic substances. That can open up the energy fields. That can open up our energy fields to bring these things in. And strangely enough, inherited ancestral attachments. These things can stick through the family line. I know you've heard of like family curses, where these things get passed down through family trauma, passed down through family belief systems, or what they believe to be a curse. And it happens over and over. It's like repeated behavior patterns that we see from grandparents to parents to ourselves that we want to stop before it reaches our children. And in all of these cases, there is some sort of contract, there's some sort of permission, there's some sort of agreement. It's like usually unconscious, not you're not consciously aware of it, that we make in a vulnerable state where we agree to have these things attached to us. And on that note, I do want you to be prepared. Sometimes these things are agreed upon before life. You know, they think of them karmically or soul level, or it's part of a spiritual growth process. I have seen where a person's guide or their own higher self says, ooh, you need to learn this process. You need to learn this pattern. Here, let's get an attachment. Let's get this thing stuck. So you see how it affects you. So you see what it does to your life. Now you can learn the steps to fix that, heal that, so that you have these tools, you have these skills under your belt. So now you can go help other people with this because it is a pretty rampant problem. And what are the signs that we have an entity attachment? Well, look for behavioral, emotional, even kind of psychic signs. You know, like sudden mood shifts, rage, sadness, even bouts of laughter, or those moments where it's like, no, I don't want to do anything. And it isn't like you. That isn't just who you seem to be. Addictive behaviors that don't make sense to you. And that doesn't just mean substances, but it can be, you know, the way you drive. Maybe you drive crazy in and out of traffic and you get a thrill out of it. Or maybe it can be, you know, gambling, sexuality, all of these things. It just seems to be driven by something that isn't you. Obsessive thoughts, self sabotage that's repeating over and over and over again. And I bet you've had this happen, that feeling that you're being watched and your energy is getting drained, that awareness that you're not alone, even if you feel like you're in solitude, even if you're like, there's nobody here, but why am I feeling this? And that could lead to like an inability to meditate, a difficulty connecting spiritually. You're feeling cut off from your spiritual sources, like you're doing rituals, you're trying to connect with deity, with higher guides, with loved ones, and you just can't quite make it. And they tend to also show up through nightmares, like sleep paralysis, things like that that just feel odd. In fact, this is how I know when I'm overdue for a house clearing for myself is myself and other people, my family, will have weird nightmares out of nowhere. And it's usually for me, it's like somebody's trying to break in or somebody's in messing with things. That tells me, no, 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 it's time to do some clearing. And I've seen this. I'll give you kind of an example over the years. There's been an interesting, like, repeated pattern when people have been in abusive relationships, sometimes romantic relationships, sometimes just platonic friendships, sometimes just with family members, that it is just abusive. And when they're around this person who's abusive, it just feels unespecially cruel. They're saying and doing things that, like, why would you do that? Why would you say that? And it's almost devastating. And then they cut that person out of their life. They break off the friendship. They break up out of the romance. They tell the family member, no, you're cut off. We're not connecting at all. But yet they still have those feelings. They still have those thoughts that come up. Maybe even they start doing it to themselves, or they find relationships that match those other toxic relationships. It's because there's an entity bringing those emotions, those energies up in them so that it can get fed. It will foster those relationships. It'll help a red flag look like a green flag. It's like, oh, they're acting this way. Yeah. Because it also is familiar. If we grew up in an abusive relationship, it's familiar. It's sort of comfortable. And that's what this kind of an entity would want, that familiarity, that comfort that is awful to live through. So, what are you going to do about it? Well, awareness is power. You see, these entities thrive out of our confusion, out of our ignorance, the things that we stuff down, the things that we don't want to look at. And they want you to externalize your agency, meaning, oh, this is happening to me. Oh, they're doing this to me. I am under attack. Oh, I can't stop the attack. Well, what's going on? And by giving away your power like that, that's how they keep control over you. And when you start to recognize those patterns, when you start to recognize that confusion, when you start to recognize the things you're pushing down, and you start to say things like, oh, well, they're doing this to me, when you start having that awareness, the spell starts to break. And this is why shadow work is so essential, because we are stuffing down those things that we don't want to feel, those things we don't want to think about. No, I can't do this again. No, I'm going to do something different. I don't want to think about this. It is uncomfortable. I totally get that. Sometimes it's very painful. I get that. But the more we stuff these things down, the more we refuse to acknowledge them, to recognize them, the more they're generating the energy for these entities to feed off of, to connect with and go, ooh, yummy, do this more, push it down. Again, that awareness. Why am I thinking these thoughts? Who taught me to think that way? Where did I first learn to think about those things? And you doing your shadow work, you're bringing those repressed parts to light. You're bringing that awareness up to understand it, and that also helps to break the spell. Now, spiritual hygiene is very important, where you're doing daily practices of clearing your energies out. You're aligning your energies with higher states of being. You're putting up shielding. And I don't mean like smudging, but you're really getting into intention. You're doing some good, solid spiritual work. I love to do Galder work, for example. You're getting ancestral support, and you're maintaining your energy fields. You're maintaining your energy resonance. So these things leave and they can't attach. But always keep in mind energetic sovereignty, spiritual sovereignty, where you have your boundaries, you state your boundaries, you hold them, you're very clear about who you are, what your mind is, what your thoughts are, what your emotions are, and you own your shadows. And then you take authority of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. You own that. And when you start to embody yourself fully, they can't control you. They can't mess with you, because you're willing to even look at those harder things, those painful things. You look at it, understand what that means, where it comes from, why it's there, and how it's affecting you and affecting the people around you. Boom. That starts to help in a big way. And I want you to remember, you're not powerless. You've never been, and you need to start reclaiming the narrative. And what I mean by that is the media wants to scare you. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's entertaining, but that fear really gives them some more of that control when we think, oh, these are demons beyond my control. I have to go see a priest. I have to go call an exorcist to get this away from me. That's not true. You're not a victim. You are a sovereign soul. You have that right to state your boundaries. You have that right to clear your energies. You have that right to have a free and clear mind and heart that belongs to you. And I want you to know that energy attachment is not a moral or a spiritual failing on your part at all. It happens to everybody. It happens everywhere. It is a natural part of the spiritual world. And I want you to look at this as maybe a spiritual call to deepen your power, to boost your spiritual sovereignty, to step up and take action. And that's why I created a new program called the Possession Protocol. It's a 4-part live training, and that's important, live training, where I'm going to take you through everything that you need to recognize, release, and protect yourself from spiritual attachments. Whether you're dealing with unexplained anxiety, self sabotaging patterns, or you just want to deepen your sovereignty, this is for you. And we're going to start on Thursday, July 17th. And remember, this is a live class, and it's not just information. This is more than just training, because I'm going to be performing the actual steps needed to clear entities, release spirit attachments, and to do the things that will help you keep them clear. And as part of this work, I'm going to be inviting the whisperers. These are my guides. I want you to think of these as like advanced beings, ascended masters, higher level entities. They come in, they're going to share higher level wisdom that is going to be beneficial for your spiritual growth and boosting your sovereignty. And they're going to be there to give you personal insight and clarity. This will be like channeled messages for for those people who join me live and are willing to step up and ask. And during this class, during these 4 sessions, you're going to learn about the different type of entities, how they operate, why they attach, and what keeps them anchored. You're going to learn practical techniques to clear them from your energy fields and how you can seal your energy and start to reclaim your power. This isn't spiritual therapy. This isn't spiritual theory. It's survival to boost your energetic awareness. Look in the description. You're going to find the link there for the possession protocol. Click on it now. So let's get you clear. Let's get you free so you can reclaim your sovereignty. And hey, if this resonated with you, if it hit home, I need you to hit that like button, subscribe, leave me a comment below. Leave me that comment and let me know if you've ever felt something was with you. Something was there. What did you do that helped you feel better? What did you do to help clear it? Or do you need help clearing it? And I'm going to be reading these things, and I will see you there in that class. Hail.